Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. You can find me on Twitter at DanHarris80. It is Friday. We will be doing Dan and Kyle in the morning in just a few minutes. But first, as we do every Friday, joining us from an airport, making time for us out of his busy schedule. You might hear some background noise. Sorry about that, but that's the best we can do. It is Dr. David Chao from ProFootballDoc.com. Find him at Twitter at ProFootballDoc. Doc, thank you for making the time. That's been a busy day for you.
No, thank you. And I'm sorry about the mask and maybe noise. I'm literally at the airport trying to get back. Went to that Thursday night Houston Carolina game, trying to get back to San Diego and work on 6 scores. So I'm following federal guidelines. I'm trying to actually get on my flight to San Diego and not get kicked out of here. So I apologize.
That's all right. That's all right. We appreciate it. I did see you there. I will ask you about that game in a second. Before we get into it, do you want to win a Fantasy Pro subscription for life? You can by playing in a $10 contest over at Yahoo. And hopefully you used our deal to sign up for 6 months free of our Hall of Fame package when you went to fantasypros.com/offers, where all you had to do was deposit $10 at Yahoo. And if not, you can do that now, fantasypros.com/offers. But if you have, again, a $10 deposit, go to fantasypros.com/life. You can try to win a contest, and with that $10 deposit, and you win a Fantasy Pro subscription for life. If you win, there are cash prizes up for grabs as well, up to $2,500, $2,500. Places 2 through 5 win a Fantasy Pros subscription, and the top 600 win cash. So again, fantasypros.com/life. All right, Doc, you were at the game. Let's talk about that game. Christian McCaffrey leaves with what is described, I believe, as a hamstring strain. What do you think from the video? How long do you expect him to miss?
Well, one thing I definitely learned is that, unlike the Super Bowl, when you're in a press box and you do get the good TV replays, I went to the game with my wife and, had some friends on the Carolina side as well as the Houston side. And I don't have real replays, right? So that made it harder and binoculars. So, but look, it's always hard to tell a hamstring strain, how severe, right? We always say, did he pull up right before he hurt it severely, or did he pull up because he hurt it severely? Now, I don't like to judge injuries based on the reaction, more on the video. You know that. But here in this case, we don't have a lot to go on. He was in the blue tent for a long time, immediately ruled out. Christian McCaffrey, who always wants to play, signaled to come out of the game that something was up. Good sign is he did walk under his own power, but he did go into the locker room. But here's the thing. Purely based on how the Panthers treated him last year, unless they think they're ready to go to the playoffs and win it all this year, and maybe they do. They are 3-0. They treated him with kid gloves last year with the high ankle and then the shoulder. I don't see, based on the injury, based on how they treat him, how he plays next week. Now, hopefully, good news would be to avoid injured reserve. And I'm not sure that he will. It's only 3 weeks now. But that would be great news. But at this point, even with the Thursday game, I think it's going to be very difficult to have him next week at least.
Yeah, I don't think that's too surprising given how quickly they ruled him out of the game. How about Amari Cooper, Doc? He's dealing with ribs, but sounds like everything's trending in the right direction. Do you expect him to play and play effectively this weekend against Philadelphia on Monday night?
I do. First of all, the limited practice is a good sign. And, of course, probably a rib block injection. And I think he can be good to go and productive. All along, I felt like Amari Cooper would play, Darrell Henderson would play, but perhaps Tua would not. And there's been a smattering of ribs, obviously, out there in the league this week.
Let's go on to Diontae Johnson, Doc. We have not seen the practice reports yet about Diontae Johnson. So just sort of, I'm assuming, frankly, that I think he's going to be ruled out in this game. Got hurt at the very end of last game. What do you know? What are your insights here on Diontae Johnson?
By video, I never saw a specific significant injury. Now, admittedly, when he was tackled, Jonathan Abrams' body covers the knee, so you can't tell for sure. But remember, he had a week 1, I think it was week 1 injury where he banged knees and came back it was definitely week 1. This is week 3 only, so week 2 was the end of game. Week
Sure.
1, banged knees, and it looked bad, and we said we don't see anything, but he banged knees. He missed 2 running plays and came back. Now, this might be related, just soreness. We hope so. By video, we don't see anything more. So I think there's still a chance he could go, but you're right. 2 straight DNPs does not look good. But I wouldn't, rule him out for this week yet. And we'll see. Obviously, he's got lots of targets, the whole thing. And I don't see anything significant. It is hard to prove a negative, but I saw Twitter light up with, he tore his ACL, his MCLs. I'm like, maybe, but I just don't see it, right? So I think you could still hold out a little bit of hope.
All right, let's talk about somebody who had torn his ACL. That's Odell Beckham Jr. Now, it's all over the place, Doc. I don't even know what to, beginning of last week looked good, then optimism, then, he didn't play in week 1. Then the last week it was declared out very early on. We talked about him on last week's show. Now this week it was, looks good, all systems go. Going to be a game time decision. Today there's a report that looks good. I mean, do you think Odell Beckham Jr. is going to play? And if not, I mean, how long do you think this is going to linger here?
Look, I think Odell will play. Like we talked about last week, I think the team ruled him out early to do him a favor from that emotional decision that he had to make week 1. It wasn't a setback. But things change, right? And we've talked about it before, and we'll talk about it probably again next with Carson Wentz. But the situation changes. And what I mean by that is when Jarvis Landry was up and healthy, look, it makes sense to say, Odell, take your time. Let's go to other options. Now with Odell, the number one guy, with Jarvis out with the MCL, I think this almost pushes it where he's going to play. That doesn't mean he's going to be 100% yet, but, 85% of Odell's pretty good. And it's a very good option for the Browns right now. So I think circumstances sometimes dictate what's going to happen. But the knee situation hasn't changed. He's going to get gradually better and better, and we'll see what happens here.
You mentioned him, Carson Wentz. Surprisingly, Doc, right before we started recording, it came on that he was practicing today, which shocks me. Reports of a high ankle sprain on one ankle, a regular low ankle sprain, whatever you call it, on the other. Do you think Carson Wentz is going to be able to play this weekend? And can he be effective if he does play?
Dan, I'm surprised. You normally are like on everything that we put out at the website and other. And I said on Sunday, yes, he got twisted up like a pretzel with Aaron Donald. And boy, that's got to hurt. And not having, quote, a good leg to stand on with both ankles is difficult. I understand why he didn't return to the game. But I also said, I kind of think that he will play, right? Even with both ankles, because I think he was more hurt, not injured. I'm not so sure it was a high ankle. Remember, he was rolled up with Aaron Donald, but it wasn't like his foot was planted in a body hit against another force. So that helps him. And really, no offense to the other quarterbacks, but what option do the Colts really have? They have a divisional game. They're already down 0-2. They're playing the Titans. I mean, Jacob Eason, Brett Hundley, who's still new to the team. Look, an 85% Carson Wentz, even if they change the play packages for his mobility or lack of, is still got to be better than the other options. So this is a case where I think he's a tough guy and he's going to tough it out, but the Colts also need him. And that's why all along this week I said he's going to get his rest, but I think he's going to get the nod on Sunday, and we'll see.
At 0-2, they need the win here against the Titans, so, I can see him doing everything. But, yeah, return to practice today. Last guy here, Doc, Dalvin Cook. I don't know the practice reports yet. He was in and out of that last game last week against Arizona with an ankle injury. He might have suffered a stinger, apparently, that I saw. So he hasn't practiced yet this week. Same question as usual. Do you expect him to play? If he plays, can he be effective?
I actually do hold out hope that he will play. Like, Dalvin's been through this routine before with injuries. You and I have seen it. He's tough. He always comes through. There's no question he was limping significantly, whatever. But once again, by video, did not see one where you'd say, oh, for sure he's going to be out. I'm hoping it's just rest this week for him and then get him going. And so, obviously, we have to follow Friday's report. My guess is he's limited practice, questionable. I guess it's going to be, quote, a game-time decision. Or someone's going to say it's a true game-time decision as opposed to a fake game-time decision. But I still lean towards him going.
That's great. I did just come across Odell Beckham Jr. not even listed on the final injury report. So that is obviously good news. All right, Doc, you got stuff in the background. I know you got to go catch your flight. Go get it. Everybody go follow him at profootballdoc.com. We're going to get into the rest of the show here with Yates and break down every game. All right, guys, it is time for Dan and Kyle in the morning. Yates, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. It is time to sit back with a good friend and just talk some football for the next hour, maybe hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Who knows how long this podcast will go, but that is what I am here for, just to sit back with you and talk some football. What could be better?
There are a lot of things I can think of that could be better than sitting for an hour and talking with you, but nevertheless, we proceed. Look, you guys know what this is. We are going to go through every single game and break it down from a start or sit perspective. We will always begin, as we do, with breaking down yesterday's game and the Christian McCaffrey injury, of course. But we've got a lot to get to before we do. Let's start with the Kyler Murray football that we are giving away. All you got to do to be entered is leave a review for this show on Apple Podcasts or CastBox, and then go to fantasypros.com/contest. If you are subscribed to our YouTube channel, it counts as 3 times the entry. That is youtube.com/fantasypros. And you should be subscribed to that anyway. We video all our podcasts. We have 4 weekly live streams, I believe, including 2 on Sunday mornings to help you set your lineup. We do weekly videos. We're going to be adding a new one that we're going to be doing about trades and rest of season rankings. So make sure you tune into that. Again, youtube.com/fantasypros. 121,000 people. This is one of my favorite parts when I talk about it. Yates on the show is that every week it's like up by 3,000 people. It's the man. You guys are the best. Everybody's the best. You guys who listen and watch. Even the people who make mean comments about me, I still love you. Okay, so let's start as we usually do with the over-under challenge here. Yates, you know what it is, fantasypros.com/challenge. It is completely free to play. It is 10 fantasy point over-unders, weekly prizes, season-long prizes, sponsored by Caesars. Again, fantasypros.com/challenge. Let's get into it. Tom Brady at the Rams. Tough matchup, 21.3 fantasy points, Yates.
Yeah, like you said, tougher matchup here than he has had through the first 2 weeks, but it's Tom Brady, and the way that he's performing right now, I can't move off of that, so I will take the over.
That is the correct answer. How about Daniel Jones against Atlanta? People want to start him as a QB1. We'll talk about it. 19 fantasy points.
Oh, man. All right, this feels... You remember that viral video from several years ago where it was that person, like, launching a watermelon off a giant slingshot, and then it comes back and, like, ricochets them right in the face? Like, I don't know how... I think they survived that. I don't know how they did. But anyway, that feels like starting Daniel Jones this week. Like, that has the potential to, all right, here we go. Oh, no, it's coming right back in my face. Daniel Jones versus Atlanta. I'm going to take the over.
I am too, and it hurts my soul to do it, but I am doing it. I'm not sure I'm going over on this one, though. Alvin Kamara against New England, 18.4 fantasy points.
Oh, that's a high line for Kamara and what we've seen through the first 2 weeks. With this offense, we have no sort of predictability. Trying to project this game and the game plan was an absolute nightmare. So I'll take the under here. I'll play it safe.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the under on this one. DeAndre Swift against Baltimore, 14.2 fantasy points.
Another high line, I think. I think he can bring a safe floor. I don't know if I see him finding the end zone in this matchup, which he would need to hit the over on this one, so I'll take the under.
Yeah, I am too. It's weird because I feel like a lot of these I'm leaning under, and I'm usually leaning the over, oddly enough, when we do these. But this one, there's a lot of under, including this one for me, Yates. Clyde Edwards-Helaire against the Chargers, 13 fantasy points.
This is really funny. I actually have Clyde Edwards-Helaire projected for exactly 13 fantasy points. Like, I'm not even kidding. Exactly.
You have
13.
him in the end zone then?
I do. I think that he can at least... I'm betting on it. You know, like, I think that there's a possibility and a high probability of it happening. But, man, it's a risky line. I'll take the under. I'll just play it safe. Even though I've got it as a push, I'll take the under.
I will as well. Cooper Kupp unstoppable against the Bucs, 15.2.
Yeah, at this point, you got to take the over on whatever Cooper Kupp's line is.
That's correct. Hollywood Brown off to a great start against Detroit, 12.4 fantasy points.
There's actually the possibility that he doesn't play in this matchup. There's been some late injury news with Marquise Brown. So I'm going to play it safe here. I'm going to take the under as well.
I'm going to go over because it sounded basically like last week he was like, I'm not going to be able to suit up. I'm not going to be able to do it. And then he just dominated. So I'm going with that again. I'm going over. Tyler Lockett against Minnesota, 15.5 fantasy points.
You got to take the over. Until we see it come crashing back down, you got to take the over. And this game should be a shootout.
This is going to be a good game to watch. And I am also buying the over. And by the way, go over to youtube.com/bettingpros. You will find that Tyler Lockett's receiving yards is one of my favorite player props for the week. There's a video we just dropped. Cortland Sutton against my Jets, 11.7 fantasy points.
I think he easily finds the end zone in this one. I'll take the over.
I agree. Rob Gronkowski, last one at the Rams, 9.8 fantasy points.
I mean, he's averaging 2 receiving touchdowns per game, so I will take the over here.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's awesome. Buy high, in my opinion. I'm totally good to go. All right, as you guys know, it's Dan and Kyle in the morning, which means it's Friday morning, which means we don't quite have the Friday practice reports, although if history holds true, something will drop right in the middle of this podcast and we'll have to call an audible. So bear that in mind when we're giving our start-sit recommendations. We will put out caveats. But before we get into it, let's talk about last night and Panthers 24, Texans 9. There's actually a lot of things I want to discuss about this game, Yates, but it obviously begins with the Christian McCaffrey injury. He strains his hamstring. We talked about it with Dr. Chao earlier. He is probably going to miss some time here. So it's a soft matchup, but Chuba Hubbard comes in 11 for 52 on the ground, 5 targets, 3 catches, 27 yards through the air. Dallas is next. Is he an RB2 for you in that matchup?
He'll be in that conversation. I think he'll be a low-end RB2, high-end RB3. Now, the value of Christian McCaffrey obviously comes from not only just he's a phenomenal runner on the ground, but also his receiving workload. And Chuba Hubbard does not have the pass catching chops that, McCaffrey does or whatever. We saw that even last night where Darnold just kind of was like, all right, I'm throwing to Christian McCaffrey. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. I'm throwing to Chuba Hubbard. So right. I think he can get enough done on the ground, but I'm not buying that he's going to rise above a, top 20 running back if he doesn't have that receiving workload.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, I could see him. I'm just trying to ballpark it right now, and obviously depends on what else happens this week. High teens, low 20s is where I think he's going to be. I agree. I mean, it's obviously not you replace Christian McCaffrey because you just don't, but we saw Mike Davis and how valuable he was every time. So if Hubbard does get that workload, and again, this was just filling in on a moment's notice, you give the team 10 days to sort of prepare for not being with McCaffrey. They might have a different game plan. We'll see how it works, but he's certainly going to be someone who you will start in fantasy. Yates, there's an old movie called War Games. I assume you haven't seen old movie, but as in like the 80s. I assume you've never seen the movie War Games?
That would be a correct assumption.
That's not a difficult one there. That introduced just to the general public something called DEF CON, which I doubt many non-military people knew at the time. And there are 5 levels of DEF CON. It's essentially military readiness. And really what in our vernacular it means is how concerned are you? DEF CON 5 is basically not concerned at all. DEF CON 1 is basically the sky is falling. What is the DEF CON on Robby Anderson, who had 2 targets, 1 catch, 8 yards? He's got 11 targets, 5 catches, 103 yards in 3 games this year. What's DEF CON level?
It would have been DEF CON 1, just because before the Christian McCaffrey injury, just because it was like, okay, he's not involved in this offense whatsoever. Now I'm at like a 3, where I'm still definitely concerned about Robby Anderson, but with Christian McCaffrey going out, that opens up the target share in this offense immensely. And we didn't see it take place last night. We saw it going to DJ Moore and to Terrace Marshall, but I think that there is still a path for Robby Anderson to be fantasy relevant. However, I don't know if I can trust him in my starting lineups moving forward until I see it happen.
Absolutely. I definitely, the McCaffrey injury from a fantasy standpoint helps Anderson, and I don't read too much into what we saw yesterday because I try to write off what if something happens in the middle of the game and teams aren't prepared, like who knows if they're going to alter their game plan. Going forward, it certainly helps him, but I agree. Like, there's no way you can start him, and we have just been slowly getting more and more concerned about it. Right now, again, if McCaffrey had not been injured, I'd be off Anderson entirely. Either way, you're not going to be able to start him next week. You can start DJ Moore, 12 targets, 8 catches, 126 yards. Got a little banged up. Thankfully, you had one of your followers right there at the game telling you that he's fine, and he came back in. That guy is hired, actually. Thank you for requesting a job. So just generally, Yates, where is Moore going to rank rest of season in your wide receiver rankings?
He's now pushing low-end wide receiver 1. I mean, he has the talent. We always knew that, but it was about the targets and then also just finding the end zone. Now, he hasn't been able to find the end zone consistently, but the target volume is absolutely there. So I think he is now one of the most reliable wide receiver 2s in all of fantasy football, and he's now pushing into that low-end wide receiver 1 territory with some of these guys that were in that top tier not being as productive, right? A DK Metcalf, like I can see ranking them pretty closely in my rest of season rankings when I do that update on Monday. So it was crazy. DJ Moore, 9 targets with like 12 minutes remaining in the second quarter. It was like he's going to get 100 targets tonight. It only ended up with 12, but only, and still extremely productive. So yeah, I'm definitely rising on DJ Moore.
I agree. Wide receiver 1 going forward. And he's been pushing it already. Like I've been just kind of trying to hold him back a little bit because I thought, let's see what happens. Let's see if Anderson gets there, especially without McCaffrey. The offense is going to run through him. Meanwhile, Davis Mills hangs in there, 19 for 28, 168 yards, and a touchdown to our old friend Anthony Miller. But Brandin Cooks, man, I love it. 11 targets, 9 catches, 112 yards. QB doesn't matter. The guy is just locked in as a starter, right? But what about next week? Tough matchup against Buffalo.
Yeah, definitely a tougher matchup, but at this point, it was the same argument going into this one. It was, well, he's going to see a minimum of 10 targets, and even if he catches, 50% of them, like, he's still going to end up with a fine line for a wide receiver 3. So I think now he's still in that range for me. He's still just a high-end wide receiver 3. Moving forward, the quarterback play doesn't matter. And Davis Mills was competent, right? He was able to at least set up Brandin Cooks in some spots there to be able to succeed. And I think that moving forward, the matchup really doesn't matter if he's going to get that kind of volume. It's just you can't go crazy with your expectations and say, like, Brandin Cooks is a wide receiver 1 now. No, he's still a wide receiver 3. You still need to temper your expectations.
Yeah, Mills is better than I thought, honestly. Like, I'm not, I don't think anybody really is going crazy over him, but I expected him to struggle more than he did in this game. So certainly good to see. Again, they get Buffalo next week, so we'll see about that. Then the Patriots. So, but Cooks, it doesn't really matter what team he's on or who his quarterback is, finds a way to produce, which is great to see. All right, let's start off here with Sunday's games. Let's start off with the Chargers against the Chiefs. Start with the Chargers because the Chiefs, we pretty much know what we're doing. I assume that, there are a lot of good quarterbacks right now here, Yates, but, I mean, Herbert is locked into your top 12, right?
He's just at the edge. I've got him at 12. So the yardage has been there, the attempts have been there, everything has been there, but the touchdown rate has not been what we want it to be for fantasy. So in this game, it's kind of the same thing as what we projected with Dallas last week. It's like, okay, this could be a shootout game, and then it turns into a defensive battle. Now, I think that this will be a shootout. So there is the path for Herbert to finish as a top 8, top 7 option at when it's all said and done, but I just need to see it first before I am a little bit more confident. So I've got him behind guys like Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford. They're at 10, 11, and 12.
Okay. Right now I have him just ahead of it, but it's very thin. I have 9, then I have Rodgers, then I have Stafford. But again, you're starting these guys if you drafted him. This is not a week where you have to go to the waiver wire. You're obviously starting Austin Eckler. You're obviously starting Keenan Allen. Mike Williams, I assume, has done enough here to warrant absolute rock-solid guaranteed start in your lineup. Is that fair?
Absolutely. I think last week was the one where I was like, okay, I want to see it because we've had some fluke performances from Mike Williams in the past. I was still ranking him as a top 30 option, but I was like, okay, let's see it happen one more week. I've got him at 23 on the week. I think that he is a locked and loaded wide receiver too.
Yep, I've got him at 21 as well. I feel very, very comfortable. How about Jared Cook? Suddenly, again, you and I feel like we're totally off Jared Cook, but he's producing at this point. Is he in your starting lineup if you roster him?
Yeah, based on the other options at the tight end position, I mean, I've got Jared Cook at tight end 8 on the week.
Wow.
He would be a lot higher, I think, in consensus opinion, if that touchdown had stood last week, right? He had it called back for an illegal shift, and so I think that he would definitely be just viewed higher in our consensus opinion. I'm buying in, especially in this game where I think that Herbert has a bounce back potential. Then I think that Jared Cook could easily find the end zone again.
Jared Cook or Robert Tonyan?
I have Cook at 8. I have Robert Tonyan at 9.
Jared Cook or, oh boy, I have to do it, Jonnu Smith.
I have Jared Cook at 8. I have Jonnu Smith at 14.
Very good. Jonnu Smith at 14, by the way, is the correct answer. So I'm glad you had it. You're obviously sitting the backup running backs here for the Chargers.
Correct.
For the Chiefs, of course, you're starting Patrick Mahomes. Of course, you're starting Tyreek Hill. Of course, you're starting Travis Kelce. And based on our discussion where you have him projected for a touchdown, you are starting Clyde Edwards-Helaire in this matchup, right?
As a low-end RB2, you've got to adjust expectations. I think that we've talked about this on the podcast throughout the week, where Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think we can no longer view him as this top 12 potential running back in this offense. And it's crazy to say, but I think he would be even more productive for fantasy if he was in a different offense that featured him as a receiver. And he has the potential to see like a Christian McCaffrey type workload through the air and excel with it. That is his best trait. However, he's not needed in this offense. So even in a game where we didn't see Tyreek Hill perform very well, Clyde Edwards-Helaire was just put to the wayside. So I've got him at 21 on the week. I think you can still start him, but he's a safe option. He's going to get some work, but he's probably not going to find the end zone.
Yeah, I listed him as my buy low in that featured pros that we did where we asked experts from around the industry, like, who's your buy low? He still is my buy low, and not at the pre-draft prices, but right. I think his perceived value right now, Yates, I mean, people want to drop him. I mean, I'm not saying people are,
yeah, I know,
but they're just so frustrated with him, and you understand why, of course. But to me, again, the bottom line is when you get to RB20 or roughly around there, like, the pickings aren't great anyway, so right. I would rather just go with someone like Edwards-Helaire. I agree, I have him at 20 anyway, so I am starting him. Anybody else? Are you starting McCall Hardman or anybody else on the Chiefs?
No, we saw Hardman, Pringle, Robinson all involved last week, but that was in a game that Tyreek Hill was just, blanketed with coverage. Right. They had double team on Tyreek Hill all game long. So I don't expect that to happen moving forward. I think that Hill is going to get back to seeing plenty of targets. Hardman and the other options in this offense are just inconsistent. It goes to Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill.
Yep, I agree. All right, let's go to the Cardinals against the Jaguars. Of course, you're starting Kyler Murray. Of course, you're starting DeAndre Hopkins. Are we concerned right now? I mean, the practice report hasn't come in, Yates. He hasn't been practicing. Do we think he's going to suit up for this game?
Hopkins?
Yeah.
I haven't heard anything about that.
I thought he missed practice both days. I could be, unless I'm totally missing it.
I don't know if I saw anything like that, but I mean, at this point, of course, we'll monitor what happens here today, but I haven't heard anything, so I think that he's a full system to go for this one.
I could have had my complete everything crossed, but I will look it up. Okay, regardless, forget about him. No, he was out of practice. But again, I don't know exactly what his ribs apparently for it, but okay, since you weren't even aware of it, this is great podcasting. We're totally fine. I'm still expecting him to play, by the way, unless he misses today later on. Right. Again, this is something where nobody's been really talking about it, probably because he's a veteran, doesn't need to practice that much. But assuming he goes, he's a full go. Let's work under the assumption that he is going. How about the other receivers here, Yates? I mean, a lot of people want to start Rondale Moore. You know we love him. Are you starting Rondale Moore in this matchup?
Absolutely. I've got Rondale Moore. Now, it comes with a caveat. I'm not going to call him a top 24 option or anything like that. I've got him at 37 on the week. So I think that Rondale Moore is definitely in that low-end wide receiver 3, high-end flex conversation in this matchup. The Jaguars are not going to be able to stop anyone, and especially this offense. So I think Arizona could easily put up 40-plus points in this one. Rondale Moore, excellent chance of finding the end zone. I still think that there is a little bit of a lower floor. I am still concerned with the snap count. I still think that we're going to see some inconsistencies week in and week out from the other options here in this offense, not named DeAndre Hopkins. So sure. I am still I want to see it play out for a couple more weeks before I start ranking him as a top 30 option. Rondale Moore, though, definitely has upside in this one.
Yeah, I have him still as a flex play. I love Rondale Moore. Obviously, I've talked about him nonstop. I get a little nervous, just a guy who is seeing fewer than 50% of the snaps. Once we're getting into this range of if you have really reliable options elsewhere, it's hard for me. He's still a flex play for me, though. I agree with you. Not Christian Kirk, though, right? He's not in that range.
I'm starting Christian Kirk this week. I've got him at 39.
Ooh, okay.
Kirk's been fantastic.
He's been good.
And in this matchup up against the Jags secondary, I think that Kirk has an excellent chance of finding the end zone. So it's kind of in that same, I don't know which way the ball is going to go. I don't know if it's going to go to Rondale Moore. I don't know if it's going to go to Christian Kirk. So kind of putting these guys in the same range. Kirk has just as much upside, in my opinion, as Rondale Moore this week.
Okay. See, for me, Kirk is a sit and Moore is a start. Just for me, because again, I just don't know how many players on the Cardinals are going to be able to have monster days here. I realize it's against the Jaguars. I'm wondering whether or not that almost cuts against it because they don't need the shootout like they had necessarily, right? They thought they needed a ton of points against Tennessee. They needed to keep up with Minnesota. They're probably going to trounce the Jaguars. This is not a team that has anything going for it right now. So I could see them taking their foot off the gas. But okay, Kirk's a start for you. My bad. Kirk is a sit for me. I assume you're starting Chase Edmonds, not James Conner?
Correct.
Wonderful. Max Williams after last week? Okay, not yet. Very good. Me neither. Jaguars. James Robinson done enough last week to get in your starting lineup?
He is technically a start based on where our criteria within the top 30, but I've got him at 28 on the week. So this is a very tough matchup. The Arizona Cardinals defense is pretty solid, and I just don't think that this offense is going to be able to do very much. So James Robinson, very little upside here in this matchup, in my opinion.
The most reluctant start recommendation that you can get, and I concur as well. So that's it. I'm starting James Robinson. I'm sure I have him ranked basically as a flex play essentially, or RB3, whatever. So probably got to start him, but I don't feel great about it. Do you feel good about any of the wide receivers starting in this matchup for the Jags?
I actually do with Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones, I've got as a mid-range wide receiver 3. I think that you can lean into the target volume. It's kind of the same thing as Brandin Cooks. It's like the target volume is going to be there. And without DJ Chark stepping up, Laviska Shenault has done next to nothing. Yep. I think he was a full participant in practice, so I think he's going to suit up in this one. But, even if he does, I don't think he's going to take away significant targets here. Trevor Lawrence, trust Marvin Jones, and that's what we need for fantasy. In a bad offense, there is the target volume to fall back on. So Jones, I think, is a safe option for you.
I agree. I'm at 27, which feels weird, right? But I think that's where you got to go. And we saw this in the preseason. They had built a rapport, especially with Chark out with an injury, and it's carried over here. So I'm totally good to go with him. Let's go to the Bears against the Browns. Are you starting Justin Fields in his first start?
He is in the conversation. I would prefer to look elsewhere. I have Justin Fields at 15. So for context, I would rather play Derek Carr. I would rather play Kirk Cousins, Justin Herbert, and then, we're moving into, Daniel Jones. I would play Daniel Jones over Justin Fields this week. I think that Fields has the potential to crack the top 12 with his rushing ability, but just not in this matchup. I think next week against Detroit, if he is still the starter, then he'll be a top 10 option for me, but I'm just not in his first game.
That's fair. I have him at 14th, so I have him right now. And again, this is one where I'll tweak. And I had Darnold at 15th, so if he moves down, he goes to 16 essentially, and it feels like a bigger drop. But I just think with the pass rush here, Yates, that's going to allow him to basically be like, all right, I got to get out of here. I'm going to run. I think you're going to see a big rushing total in this one. So I'm totally fine to start Fields in this matchup. You're starting Dave Montgomery. You're still starting Allen Robinson, I assume?
Yes, of course.
How about Darnell Mooney?
Yeah, Mooney's inside my top 40 for the week. I have Mooney at, I have him at 40. So I think that he definitely is in the flex conversation. He comes with upside. The target share that he had last week was significant at 38% off the top of my head. So I think that he has the potential to soak up targets here from Justin Fields. He had just a couple of missed opportunities where it could have been a much bigger game for him. So I'm buying into Darnell Mooney with Justin Fields.
How about Cole Kmet?
He is just outside of that range for me. I believe I have him. I have him right at 15. So he does crack the start for me, where you can look his way. The snap count is still going his way. The targets did not last week, but again, once you get past this range of like the top 12, top 10 even, it's just kind of like, okay, I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to play a tight end and hope that it pays off. I think that Kmet with Justin Fields should see plenty of opportunity.
You are obviously starting Nick Chubb, of course, but nothing frustrates me more than ranking Kareem Hunt each and every week.
Rough.
It's so where do you have him? Just put 25. It out there with the number.
25. I think that's the exact spot that I had him last week.
Yeah, right. I'm 26. That's just what it is. It's like, again, he needs the touchdown if he's going to have like legit value, but he'll see whatever it is, 10 touches, he'll get 60 yards, and you got to hope for more. But yeah, he's just kind of guy. Would you rather start Kareem Hunt or Mike Davis against Giants?
I'll start Kareem Hunt there. The caveat here too with Kareem Hunt is, and I'm sure that you'll talk about the wide receivers here in a second, but Jarvis Landry on IR. Odell Beckham Jr. seems like he's going to play, but might not. We don't really know what's going on with that situation just yet. So if Odell Beckham Jr. sits, then I think that you have the potential where Kareem Hunt can be used more as a receiver, which I think does present a little bit more upside. So in that instance, if Odell Beckham Jr. is ruled out, then I think Hunt will move up into my top 24, maybe into that like just above Elijah Mitchell range. I've got Mitchell right now as a placeholder at 22. I could see sliding in Kareem Hunt at RB 22 on the week, where he could see a little bit of an uptick in his receiving workload. But outside of that, I'm not really looking to play Kareem Hunt if I can avoid it.
I mean, we didn't have Odell last week, and Jarvis Landry went out early, and we still didn't see much Kareem Hunt in that game, right? But, who knows what we're going to do. But it does sound, as you mentioned, this is like a ping pong, thing so with weird. Odell, right? Yeah. Full practice, totally good to go. Think he's going to be a real game time decision. Now a report this morning that absent a setback, he's going to play. If Odell Beckham Jr. plays, is he in your starting lineup?
He is as a low-end wide receiver 3. He's technically, or like a low-end wide receiver 3, high-end flex play. You'd be in that same range of, Christian Kirk, Darnell Mooney, Rondale Moore. I think that he's in that same range. Probably rather play Rondale Moore. I might rather play Christian Kirk. Darnell Mooney is going to be the one where I'm going to have a tough time figuring out if I want to slide him, Odell Beckham Jr., into that top 40. So he's right on that range, though.
Okay, anybody else in the Browns you want to consider starting, and does it depend on whether or not Odell Beckham Jr. plays?
I think Austin Hooper is in the conversation, but I was talking with Andrew Erickson about this on the Wednesday show, was like, everything lines up for Austin Hooper to constantly be like, okay, he can produce in this matchup, and then we look his way and he does nothing, and then the next week we go, this isn't an Austin Hooper game, and it's an Austin Hooper game. So I just don't want to play this, but if you're absolutely desperate at tight end, you can look at Austin Hooper. Otherwise, he's a sit for me.
Washington visiting Buffalo. Antonio Gibson sounds like he's good to go with the shoulder, which is good, and you're starting him, and you're starting Terry McLaurin. Are you starting Logan Thomas?
Yes, Logan Thomas definitely in the top 10, I believe. I have him at 10. So yeah, I definitely think you can look at Logan Thomas. With Taylor Heineke, he's one of the most competent, or more competent, tight ends in the NFL. More competent backup quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think that he can provide value for Logan Thomas. I think he can keep him afloat for fantasy purposes. So yeah, Logan Thomas, tight end 10.
Anybody else on Washington who you want to start?
No.
For the Bills, Josh Allen, you're starting, even though it's been a little bit of a weird start. You're, of course, starting Stephon Diggs. How about the running backs here, Yates? You had Zack Moss inactive in week 1, active in week 2, got the 2 garbage time touchdowns late in that game, and you had Devin Singletary, who still produced, even though Zack Moss was active. So what are you doing here with the running backs?
I am still looking to avoid them if I can. I really do not want to buy into what we're seeing here from this backfield. Last week was, they finished they won 35-0. That was garbage time. So, and Devin Singletary relied on a big time run to be able to provide that fantasy value. So I just don't want to live and die with that. I will sit Singletary and Zack Moss again.
Devin Singletary or Tony Pollard?
I'll play Tony Pollard.
Mm-hmm. Very good. That's where we are. Anybody else in the Bills here? Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Gabriel Davis?
They're all outside my top 40. I think that you can get away with starting them, but I don't have high expectations.
Colts visiting the Titans. I'm going out on a limb and guessing that by the time you're listening to this, Carson Wentz has been ruled out of this game. But either way, let's analyze it both ways. If Carson Wentz plays, who are you starting on the Colts? If he doesn't play, who are you starting on the Colts?
If Carson Wentz does play, I think that you can get away with Michael Pittman Jr. as a wide receiver or a high-end flex play. I think that you can get away with it. The matchup is incredible. And then Jonathan Taylor is the only other one that I'm considering. If Carson Wentz sits, then I am only playing Jonathan Taylor. I don't want to... Jacob Eason and Brett Hundley potentially rotating snaps.
Right.
Thank you. No, thank you. I think Pittman can succeed, with in quotations, but it's not going to lead to, high end flex production. So I'll sit him if I have him.
I'm right with you. I'm starting Taylor. And of course, you're starting Taylor regardless of the quarterback. This idea of we've got to project this with Jacob Eason. And now it's going to be like, no, we're going to rotate series with Hundley. Just not going to work.
Right.
But I agree with you, though. Pittman, I would start as a flex if it is Carson Wentz. I wouldn't feel great about it just because I don't expect Carson Wentz to necessarily be anywhere close to 100%, even if he suits up. But regardless, not expecting him here. So it's basically Taylor.
This is
or
such
bust.
a bummer, though, because after what Pittman did in week 2, I was going to be obnoxious on this podcast. And then Wentz, of course, gets injured. In this matchup, I'd be like, yep, Michael Pittman Jr., top 30 option. Let's go. And now I can't do that.
I will be sending Carson Wentz a thank you letter for just taking it a little easy this week, so I did not have to endure that. You can do it privately on Slack. For the Titans, you should probably start Derrick Henry, just kind of going to go out on a limb there. A.J. Brown coming off a terrible game, doesn't matter. You're starting him. You're starting Julio Jones, I'm sure. How about Ryan Tannehill? You've got fantasy managers a little frustrated right now. You've got these, I get the Daniel Jones or Ryan Tannehill question like 40 times so far this week. What do you think?
I'm playing Daniel Jones. I had to make this exact decision in one of my leagues. And again, this could very easily backfire on me. But at this point, Ryan Tannehill's the QB 26 on the season. We saw the offense bounce back a little bit here in week 2. Ryan Tannehill looked a lot better, but I can't buy into it just yet. And it's terrible because I want to rely on Ryan Tannehill. We drafted him to be able to rely on him, and that's just not happening. So I have Ryan Tannehill at 17 on the week right now.
Ooh, okay. So right now I have him 12 and Jones is 13th, and I have flip-flopped them like 2 or 3 times so far this week. So I would start Tannehill, at least as of right now. You guys can check my rankings or check me out on Instagram at 10 a.m. on the Fantasy Pros account on Sunday morning. I think the concern about Tannehill is a little overblown. Again, if Julio Jones, if they don't overturn that touchdown,
that was ridiculous.
His game looks so. I can't. We can go on a whole diatribe here about that, but I think Tannehill is like fantasy managers' minds about Tannehill is very different. Again, I've made it very clear. I kind of throw out what we saw in week 1 just because I think the COVID stuff kind of messed with their practice and everything like that. I thought they looked relatively good. A.J. Brown, dropped a couple of passes that quote unquote drop. A.J. Brown makes those catches. Tannehill could have had a monstrous game. So I have pretty few concerns here. The biggest concern for me is the fact that if there is no Carson Wentz, I could see the Titans absolutely steamrolling the Colts and making him not need to pass. So I do get that. But I will say long-term, because I know a lot of fantasy managers are asking on Discord, fantasypros.com/chat, it is something where I don't really have long-term concerns here with Tannehill.
Yeah, and let me say this too. Like with Ryan Tannehill, putting him at 17, it has less to do with Ryan Tannehill because all the points that you're making are correct. It's just Justin Fields rushing upside. Kirk Cousins, I think the game is going to be a shootout, and Kirk Cousins has been fantastic through 2 weeks. And then Derek Carr, like we've got to continue to rank him highly because he's been on fire to start the year. And then you get into the range of like Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert. Like I have more confidence in those guys. So it's less to do with Ryan Tannehill than it is just the other options at the quarterback position.
Absolutely, and I really don't disagree. You've got a lot of really good options outside the top 12 this week. And I guess for me, if you guys have followed me for a couple of years at this point, you know, generally speaking, my rankings philosophy is I always lean more towards my season-long evaluations than I do generally towards a matchup, which is why when I'm considering, is it Daniel Jones, is it Kirk Cousins, for the most part, at least as of right now, I'm probably going to have the tiebreaker of a guy like Tannehill, who I still valued more highly coming into the season, and I still think long-term has the highest value. But I certainly wouldn't fight anybody for wanting to take one of those streaming options. How about the Saints at the Patriots? This is, I think, probably the biggest ratio of players we're going to sit as opposed to players we're going to start, because there aren't that many starting options in this. I mean, let's start with the Saints. It's Alvin Kamara, who I know people are worried about, but you're obviously starting, and that's it, right?
That's it. You can't start any of these other options right now. The quarterback play has been so inconsistent. There's a path for someone else to step up, but the target share has been so distributed, like pretty evenly across these options, where it's like they're all just canceling each other out. So yeah, you can't look at any of them.
And you're starting for the Patriots, Damian Harris, and maybe John. I mean, we talked Jonnu Smith as 14th, maybe as a streamer, and that's it there, right?
Pretty much it. With Jonnu, I think that he is still seeing a significant target share. He's still going to be involved in this offense, but and with Jonnu, like where I was talking about him highly throughout the pre-draft process, it was okay. Well, Mac Jones can at least throw more than half a passing touchdown per game, and that's just not happening here. So I think we're going to see this offense struggle. It is Damian Harris; he provides a safe floor. And then Jonnu is, a streaming option at best.
Real quick, what about Jacoby Myers in this one?
He's a low-end flex play for me. He's outside my top 40.
Yeah, I've got him at 46, so that's somebody who I'm trying to basically to avoid playing him. The Falcons against the Giants, a game I'm oddly intrigued to watch. Talk about Mike Davis, because you said that you would prefer, I believe, Kareem Hunt over him. Where do you have Davis ranked this week?
I have Mike Davis at 20. Oh, I have him at 30.
30. Okay, so that's probably Yates. If you did like a flex rankings overall, like that's probably a guy who you're still starting as like kind of a low end flex.
Yeah, you can get away with starting him. I do not want to start him, but you can get away with it. Okay,
yeah, I'm a little more optimistic. To be clear, you're not starting like Cordero Patterson, right, in this matchup?
No. I think that I want to see it happen one more week before I go out on a limb and start Cordell Patterson in my starting lineup.
Right, and you are starting Calvin Ridley, of course. You're still starting Kyle Pitts, no problem?
Yep. Yeah, he's getting the target volume.
Anybody else?
No.
Okay, for the Giants, we talked about Daniel Jones. Where do you actually have Jones ranked?
I have Jones at 9, and it feels gross.
9? Oh, baby, I love it. I have him at 13, but there's not a, I cannot fault anybody for ranking him as a top 10 quarterback this week, because everything says it's going to be great, which is probably going to look at 179-yard passing, 3 fumbles, and 2 interceptions. So let's all enjoy that. Saquon, what do you think? He's got 10 days off now since his last game, some rested. Are you starting him with confidence this week?
I am starting him. I am not starting him with confidence. I think that the matchup screams that you can start Saquon Barkley. I think that the 10 days off, like you mentioned, like that definitely can play a role in it. However, he's still limited in practice. So I don't think that we are all systems go with Saquon Barkley just yet. However, I do think that you can get away with starting him. And it's kind of the Ryan Tannehill conversation. It's like it has less to do with like Saquon Barkley more so than the other options in the inverse, right? Like once you get outside of that top 14, DeAndre Swift's at 14 for me, then it's like, okay, any of these guys could be RB15. Saquon Barkley just happens to slide there.
Funny, that was my question, was Barkley against Swift. So you have Swift a spot higher?
1 spot higher, yep.
Got it. Okay, I have Barkley a spot higher, but that's basically the range. High-end RB2, I'm in agreement with you. How about the receivers here? You've got Sterling Shepard. Kudos to you, by the way. I mentioned it. Like you hit this on the waiver wire show of week 1. I was a little more, down on him, but he has looked fantastic through 2 games. You've got Kenny Golladay screaming at Jason Garrett. What do you think about these wide receivers here?
I have Sterling Shepard at 29. I have Kenny Golladay at 35. The thing with Kenny Golladay here is that he does have the upside, of course, in this matchup. It's the Atlanta Falcons secondary. Like you you should start your opposing wide receivers. But when you do projections, you also have to take into account that Evan Ingram is reportedly going to play in this game.
Yep.
So if he does come back, then he's going to take away some of the targets too that were in that, are available in this offense. And I think that we're seeing a lower passing volume offense because they're relying on Daniel Jones as a runner. So I don't think that Kenny Golladay has as much upside as a lot of other people seem to think. I think that he can easily find the end zone, of course, but I do think that he has a bit of a lower floor. So splitting the difference there, I've got him at 35.
Yep, I'm basically right in line with you as well. If Ingram plays, are you starting him? I assume not, based on everything I know about you. Okay.
No.
Just want to make it clear. Bengals visiting the Steelers. For the Bengals, you're obviously starting Joe Mixon, and you are starting Jamar Chase. I assume T. Higgins is banged up here. I guess, How do you feel about the wide receivers? He's missed practice, I think, with a shoulder injury so far. We don't have it yet. If T. Higgins plays, are you starting Higgins and Chase? And if T. Higgins does not play, what does that do to your evaluation of the wide receivers?
Yeah, of course. So T. Higgins, at this point, we got to report that it is like trending towards him not being able to play here. So that's concerning, especially for how many shares I have of T. Higgins across my leagues, and I really need him. I have, as a placeholder right now, I have him at 27. So if he plays, I think that he'll end up in that like low end wide receiver 3, just because we don't know what his health status is. Jamar Chase, for right now, I've got him at 22. If Higgins cannot go, then Chase will probably just tick up a couple of spots higher, but we would see Tyler Boyd move up the rankings into that kind of low end wide receiver 3, gets a bump up in full PPR format. So if Higgins plays, I think you can still get away with starting him. He has an excellent chance of finding the end zone, and that's kind of what you're banking on, but I'm not expecting great things just based on the practice reports from this past week.
What if Higgins does play? Are you starting Tyler Boyd then?
No, I have Tyler Boyd currently at I have him at 49. That's way too low.
Oh boy.
He will move up into. He'll still be classified as a sit for me, just because I don't know what that target volume is going to be like. It's just still inconsistent for me. So I think that Boyd he doesn't really present much upside. He had a fine matchup last week against the Bears corner, so I'm not buying into it just yet. He will still be a sit for me, but 49 is too low. He'll move up.
Like me, Yates, I assume, given the fact that we have all these great streaming options at quarterback, Joe Burrow falls way to the end of the line and is not really under consideration this week against Pittsburgh.
That is correct.
Wonderful. That is the correct answer. I like it. Once a year. For the Steelers, you've got Najee Harris, who, again, has been a little disappointing, especially from a yards per carry average, but I assume you're still starting him, right? Without question in this matchup?
Of course. I've got him at RB13. The Bengals have actually shut down Dalvin Cook and David Montgomery on the ground through the first 2 weeks, so I think this is going to be another tough matchup for Najee Harris, or another rough outing on the ground, but I think that his receiving workload, especially if Diontae Johnson misses, then Najee Harris will see an uptick in targets.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Obviously, very kind of similar situation here to the Bengals, where you've got Diontae Johnson trending in the wrong direction. Does not sound at this moment, as we record this, again, who knows when you're listening to this, that he is not going to play. So break down your thoughts on the 3 Pittsburgh wide receivers if Johnson plays, and then what do you think about the other 2 if he does not play?
Of course. So I have Diontae Johnson currently at 26, one spot above T. Higgins, just kind of as a placeholder. I think that if Diontae Johnson plays, that means that he is at least able to go, right? And whenever he's on the field, he's seeing targets. So I think you can get away with him as a mid-range wide receiver 3. I'd probably play Marvin Jones above him. Like, that's probably where I would be looking. And then of course, if Diontae Johnson plays, that bumps down Chase Claypool a little bit. I've got him at 33, and then Juju Smith-Schuster is always outside my top 40. And then if Diontae Johnson misses this game, Claypool moves up into a high-end wide receiver 3. Juju Smith-Schuster would move up into a low-end wide receiver 3 at that point. Smith-Schuster was, competent for fantasy last week because he got that rushing touchdown on the goal line. Otherwise, it would have been another disappointing performance. So I'm not buying into that just yet.
All right, let's go to the Ravens going to the Lions. For the Ravens, you've got Lamar Jackson, the hip after the flip, the illness, but he's obviously starting for you. If you're there, break me down the running back situation. Are you starting Tyson Williams?
Absolutely. You fire up Tyson Williams. He is performing incredibly well in this offense. His rushing metrics are actually very comparable to Nick Chubb's through the first 2 weeks. So in this scheme, he's performing. Now you have the, Latavius Murray coming in to freaking steal a touchdown. Like, that's annoying, but in this matchup up against Detroit, we saw Elijah Mitchell gash these guys for, over 100 yards. I think Tyson Williams can hit that mark as well. So got him at 17 on the week.
Okay, how about Hollywood Brown? We talked about the fact that as we record this, we're not 100% sure that he is going to play necessarily, but if he does suit up, are you letting him go in this matchup?
Yeah, with adjusted expectations. I have him at 34 on the week. So I think that he is still a low-end wide receiver 3 where, there's a range of outcomes here with Marquise Brown. It's Marquise Brown. He's been consistent over the past couple weeks, but I think that we're going to get to the point where at some point we're going to see Marquise Brown struggle and just put up a kind of dud performance. So I'm just baking that into my rankings here. I've still got him at 34, even if he plays.
And Mark Andrews obviously still a clear start, right?
Yeah, it's frustrating because he hasn't really performed, but if he's going to bounce back, it's going to be in this matchup. So Andrews in my starting lineup.
Anybody else? Did you mention Latavius Murray? I don't think so.
No, I didn't, but you're not starting him. He is completely a touchdown-dependent, low-end flex play.
All right, TJ Hawkinson is completely unstoppable. You start him in every single match. It's awesome.
Fantastic.
Awesome to watch, dude. Like, this is what we have wanted to see. This is fantastic. And again, we kind of thought in, draft season that this could be a perfect match here with Jared Goff. So great to see. And again, we mentioned it. I think you said that you had DeAndre Swift at 14.
Correct.
All right, wonderful. How about Jamaal Williams, though?
Jamaal Williams, TJ Hawkinson, tight end 3 for me on the week. Jamaal Williams is at 31. So he is a sit for me. You can't, it's Mike Davis, right? I've got Mike Davis one spot above. You can get away with starting Jamaal Williams, but I'm not expecting the kind of things that I saw in week 1.
So, by the way, just to be clear, if you have TJ Hawkinson and Rob Gronkowski, you are benching Rob Gronkowski, right?
Yeah, but I don't want to bench.
I just want to hear you say I'm benching Rob Gronkowski.
No, don't.
So I can have our social media guys clip it.
No.
Jets going to Denver, the game that everybody wants to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Are you starting Corey Davis in this one?
You can get away with him as a low-end wide receiver 3. He's kind of in that same territory of Rondale Moore. If you need a safe floor, I think that you can go with Corey Davis. If you need the upside, you can go with Rondale Moore.
I've got him at 42. One spot for me behind Rondale Moore. Now, Moore is at 41.
Am I higher on Rondale Moore than you?
You are, actually. And I mentioned on the kickoff this morning, Yates, that Moore was a guy who I was fading as compared to expert consensus rankings, and it made me very uncomfortable.
What is going on?
I don't know. It made me very uncomfortable based on how much I love Rondale Moore. But I would start him over Corey Davis, who's at 42 for me. Nobody else under consideration on the Jets, right?
Absolutely not. I am watching Michael Carter because his workload ticked up here in week 2. So that was kind of the thing that we talked about throughout the pre-draft process was, all right, keep an eye on Michael Carter. If you draft him, you're gonna have to be patient, and it's starting to turn a little bit sooner than we had even anticipated. So we'll see. We'll see what his workload is here in this matchup, but it's a tough matchup. You're not starting Michael Carter.
All right. Are you starting either or both Broncos running backs?
Okay, so I've got Melvin Gordon at 23 on the week, and again, that is because just the other options at the running back position. I don't feel super confident in them, so all right, I know Melvin Gordon's at least going to see work. So yeah, I've got Gordon at 23. I've got Javonte Williams at 26.
That is fine. I'm a little lower on both of them, but I think both of them are starts probably in this matchup, as is, of course, Cortland Sutton. Are you starting Tim Patrick?
He is technically a sit for me, but if you are in a pinch, you can go with Tim Patrick. He has an excellent chance of finding the end zone. So, let's say you have T. Higgins, and T. Higgins is ruled out, then I think that you could easily plug in Tim Patrick as a fine, replacement option. Given what we've seen from Noah Fant, I know that kind of a lot of fantasy managers were down on him coming into the year, and he was battling an injury all spring, but he's looked pretty good. Is he just locked in your starting lineup, generally speaking? He's still a low-end tight end 1 for me. The volume wasn't really there last week. He found the end zone, so it was able to... at least I think I'm remembering that correctly, where he didn't have a ton of targets. So I'll look that up in a second. But Noah Fant found the end zone last week. So that's typically not what Fant does. But with Jerry Jeudy out of the lineup, the target share opened up, and I think that he's taken advantage of it. Yeah, so I'm just checking right now because I think when I looked yesterday that Teddy Bridgewater was, and he is, still at 13th in our expert consensus rankings. I'm 17th, Yates, just because this strikes me as right when you've got the Cousins of the world and the Fields of the world and the Daniel Jones. Super high. That's high, right? Yeah, so what about you? I've got him at 18. Yep. All right, so we're in line here. He's a guy you can get away with if you absolutely have to, and if a lot of people in your league drafted 2 quarterbacks. But for the most part, this is just, they could win the... Go ahead. He's the last guy in the streaming conversation. After that, we get to Ben Roethlisberger for me at 19. I don't want to play Big Ben. Jimmy Garoppolo at 20. I don't want to play Jimmy Garoppolo. That's kind of that last tier for me, where And really, from 13 to 18, I'm fine with any order. I can't place Teddy Bridgewater above guys like Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, and Derek Carr this week.
That's the bottom line, right? Like, I think he's going to be perfectly serviceable, but the upside just is not there to put him ahead of those guys. So I am benching him. Let's go to the Dolphins visiting the Raiders. No Tua in this one, so it's going to be Jacoby Brissett. Are you still starting Myles Gaskin?
You can get away with him as a low-end RB2. This is the same thing with any running back outside the top 20, outside really the top 20. You're just like, yeah, you can get away with him.
You can get away with him is like the Yates euphemism for this is gross. I don't want to do this, but I have to do this because this is what this we need that on a t-shirt. Oh, I love it. You can get away with him. Yeah, that's basically why Erin married me. She was like, nah, I can get by. I can get by. I'll live. How about Jalen Waddle here with Brissett?
He'll soak up targets. I think he's still a fine option. Otherwise, I'm sitting Devontae Parker. Will Fuller in his first game back. You can't play him. Not with Jacoby Brissett. Jacoby Brissett faced 28 defensive pressures last week. For context, Joe Burrow faced 11 against the Bears defense. Jacoby Brissett this offensive line is going to get him killed.
Yates, I hate to harken back to draft season when you and Tags got into a big fight about the offensive line.
Tags was right. Surprising.
There we go. I just wanted to make sure I heard it. Okay, for the Raiders, again, you mentioned Carr. Where does Carr actually rank for you this week?
13.
Okay. He sounds good to go with the ankle injury. Right. I have him. He oddly enough, for me, Yates, he falls to the back of like that streaming line. Like I'm taking Cousins over him. I'm taking Fields over him and everything like that. Like just because I do think that the ankle probably bothered him a little bit. And I do think that obviously the Dolphins have a solid pass defense. So let's just see how this goes. But I think that's the cutoff for me. Like anybody at 18 or above, if you want to start any of these guys in a single quarterback league, I think you can absolutely get away with it, including Carr. You should probably start Darren Waller. Just a thought. Let's talk about the wide receivers. Are you starting any of them?
They are just on that edge. All three of them, actually. They're just on that edge of the top 40. So, like Henry Ruggs, I've got at 41. Bryan Edwards at 46. Hunter Renfrow just a little bit lower. So, I think you can get away with them again.
I was actually waiting because I was going to jump in and be like, so are you saying that you can get away with starting them? Go ahead.
You can start them as, I think Henry Ruggs has the most upside. Bryan Edwards is a safer floor option. And then Hunter Renfrow, I think, is just a safer floor option in full PPR league. So, yeah, I think you can start him.
Okay, so running backs, we don't know if Jacobs is going to go. I'm not expecting it as we record this.
Correct.
If he goes, are you starting him? If he doesn't go, are you starting Kenyon Drake or, God forbid, Peyton Barber?
If you start Peyton Barber, like, have mercy on your soul. I will not start Josh Jacobs, even if he does play. I just don't know what his health status is. Even if Jacobs sits, I'm really not looking at Kenyon Drake. I think that he does crack the top 30 for me in full PPR formats, but what's his ceiling? Like, he has a very, very low ceiling in this offense. So, yeah, Kenyon Drake is at RB33 in my half PPR rankings.
All right, the Bucs visiting the Rams. You are starting Tom Brady. We are assuming right now, based on everything that we heard, that it's going to be nearly impossible for Antonio Brown to play in this game just based on the timing of what needs to happen. So, assuming that he's out, just ballpark it for me. Where are Godwin and Evans in your rankings?
Yeah, Godwin is at 15 for me. Mike Evans will move up into just above Allen Robinson, so I think I would slide him in at wide receiver 20. I'm waiting on that official confirmation because there is still like a small percentage chance that Antonio Brown plays here. But so I've got Evans currently at 25. I'll probably put him at 20 just based on volume. But it is a tougher matchup up against the Rams pass defense.
And if Brown starts, you're starting all three of the receivers.
Yes, but adjusting expectations for Antonio Brown.
Very good. And you're starting, other than if you have TJ Hawkinson, you're basically starting Rob Gronkowski, right?
Correct.
How about the running backs? Are you starting Leonard Fournette?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Okay. Good enough for me. I never want to anyway. For the Rams, you're starting Matthew Stafford, and you're starting, obviously, Cooper Kupp. You're still starting Robert Woods, even though he's been a little disappointing?
Yes, but again, adjusting expectations, we can't view him as this potential high-end wide receiver 2. So I've got him at 24 on the week.
So we are recording this on Friday morning, so we don't know exactly what the deal is with Darrell Henderson. Assuming he suits up Yates in basically the worst matchup you can have, are you starting him? If he doesn't, are you starting Sony Michel?
It was really funny. John Paulson on Twitter last night tweeted out saying that, like, as a Darrell Henderson fantasy manager, I'm kind of hoping that he sits this week and they put out Sony Michel just to, run into the Tampa Bay Buccaneers rush defense or run defense. So yeah, Darrell Henderson, even if he does play, he's not going to be 100%, or even if he does play, he's not going to be 100%. So So I don't think that you can look his way. It's just I would prefer to see him sit and they rule out Sony Michel in this one.
How about Tyler Higbee? Obviously, just the one target in this last game. Are you starting him?
He's in the same range as Jonnu Smith. I've got him at 13, so you can still start him, but I'm not expecting crazy things. And I'll say this: if Darrell Henderson does sit, I'm still not going to be looking to start Sony Michel. I'm not expecting great things up against this Bucs run defense.
I'm pretty sure that was implicit in your statement there about it.
Just making sure.
I like it. I like it. Be as clear as possible. The Seahawks are visiting the Vikings. You are, of course, basically starting the guys that you know you're starting: Russell Wilson, Chris Carson, Tyler Lockett, and DK Metcalf. I assume you have Lockett ranked higher than Metcalf this week?
That is correct.
As do I. I don't know who else on the Seahawks. Gerald Everett, are you starting him?
No. Gerald Everett not seeing enough work to be considered. He had that touchdown in week 1, but I think only 2 targets in that game. So, yeah, I'm not looking his way just yet.
Okay, we haven't heard yet on Dalvin Cook. Obviously, hadn't practiced yet this week. If he starts, you're, of course, starting him. If he doesn't, are you starting Alexander Mattison?
Based on the other options at the running back position, I think that you kind of have to. I think that you at least consider him. I think Alexander Mattison would slide in as a high-end RB3 for me.
Yeah, I think I'd have him higher than that, honestly, because it just the volume that he's going to get. I realize he disappointed last year, but still, like, if you have the guy in that offense who's going to be the starting back, he's just a go for me. So
you know what? As you say that, you're right. The volume above guys like Myles Gaskin.
That's what I'm saying. At that range, Yates, like at that range, who else are we turning to? So I think you start him with a bullet, honestly, if he does go. But hopefully Cook can go. And again, there was optimism on him earlier in the week.
For the first time in your life, you are correct.
Wonderful. I'll take it. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. Of course, you are starting. Justin Jefferson is going to go over his prop bet as well. Go check out youtube.com/bettingbros. And where did Cousins wind up landing for you in the quarterback streaming rankings?
14.
Okay, very good. And we're not at the point where we're starting KJ Osborne yet, right?
In deeper leagues, you can get away with it, but not as a top 40 option.
You can get away with it, guys. The Packers visiting the 49ers. Of course, you're starting Aaron Rodgers. Of course, you're starting Aaron Jones. Of course, you're starting Devontae Adams. Where do you have Robert Tonyan drop?
Yeah, I think we talked about that earlier. I think I have Robert Tonyan one spot behind Jared Cook. I have him at 9.
Okay.
Touchdown-dependent option, but so are the rest of the options in that range.
Yeah, when you get to that range of tight end, it's just sort of throwing darts at this point. But he did look good in this last game. It was good to see. You're not starting anybody else in the Packers, I assume?
Correct.
For the 49ers, look, I don't know yet.
Everything
we don't know. Everything sounds like the back with the best chance of playing, and might be the only back with the chance of playing right now, is Trey Sermon. I thought Elijah Mitchell had a stinger. Now it's a little more than a stinger, so who the heck knows? So let's assume, for now, Elijah Mitchell out, Michael Hasty out. I don't know whatever guy they're going to bring up from the practice squad to play, but Trey Sermon in. What are you doing with Trey Sermon? Are you starting him?
He would be a high-end RB3 for me, just based on the volume.
Yeah.
I think that you kind of have to at least look at him. Now, that is a very volatile high-end RB3. Who knows? You could see Trenton Cannon lead this team in carries, or Jaquez Patrick. Who knows what is happening here with this San Francisco running back situation. So I think Sermon is a volatile play this week if he does end up suiting up. But yeah, it's looking like Elijah Mitchell trending towards not playing.
Yeah, you're starting Deebo Samuel, and you are starting George Kittle, of course. Are you starting anybody else for the 49ers?
No.
Very good. Philadelphia visiting Dallas. Jalen Hurts in your starting lineup, Yates?
Yes, sir. Because the rushing floor that he brings you. Now, I think that he is going to have to find the end zone as a runner to push into the top 10, but the floor is just incredible. So, yeah, I'll go with Jalen Hurts at quarterback 8.
Yes, very good. I am confidently starting him in this one. I have him at quarterback 7. Miles Sanders, good to go?
Yep. Yeah, I've got him at 19 currently on the week. Providing a safe floor for fantasy managers. Safe floor for fantasy managers, and that's really what I'm looking for at the running back position right now as my RB2.
Absolutely, yeah. He's RB 17 for me, so I'm starting without hesitation. How about DeVonta Smith here? I mean, Yates, I imagine that he's going to be shadowed by Diggs, which makes me a little worried, but you're still starting DeVonta Smith, right?
Yes, as a mid-range wide receiver 3. The targets are still going his way. Now, it wasn't, efficient last week, to say the least, but I think that you're still buying into the target volume, and it's a better matchup. Yeah, Trevon Diggs kind of worries me, but not to the point where I'm scared off of DeVonta Smith. So I've got 31 on the week.
Yeah, I've got him at 34, but he's certainly a start. Let's talk about another guy you can probably get away with in Dallas Goedert. I mean, where does he rank for you at tight end?
This is a weird situation because Zach Ertz is on the COVID-19 reserve list currently, but he is vaccinated, and there is a chance that he returns for this matchup. But we're not going to have that. Like, it's kind of the same thing with Antonio Brown. We might not have that clarity, just yet. So it's going to be coming down to the wire. I think if if Zach Ertz doesn't play, then Goddard would probably be a top 8 option for me just based on volume and the fact that he doesn't have Ertz as kind of that putting a cap on his fantasy output. But we're not going to have that clarity by the time that you have to make lineup decisions. So Dallas Goedert will slot in at tight end 11 for me, and that's probably where he's going to be once rankings lock.
And again, that's a start, so go for it.
Right.
I assume nobody else on the Eagles. You're not starting Jalen Reagor, right?
No, not Quez Watkins after 2-catch week last week.
Sure, of course. For Dallas, you're starting Dak. Running backs. I mean, you're still starting Zeke. I assume. Are you starting Pollard?
Pollard is definitely in the top 30 for me. I think that I've got him at 27 on the week. So, yeah, I think that even if he doesn't see as much work as he did last week, he's going to be incredibly efficient with the opportunity. So, you can look at Tony Pollard here. I've got to start him as an RB2 in a league, and I feel at least optimistic about it. And Ezekiel Elliott is at 8 for me.
Very good. And the receivers, obviously, Lamb is locked and loaded. And it sounds like Amari Cooper is trending in the right direction here with his rib injury. So I assume if he starts, you're good to go with him as well.
Yes, I have Amari Cooper at 17 with the assumption that he plays. And then CeeDee Lamb is at 14 currently.
Very good. And again, unless you play in a team tight end league, you don't want to start either Blake Jarwin or Dalton Schultz, right?
No, don't go near him.
Excellent work, Yates. You did an adequate job today. Fantastic, which is much better than... Thank you so much. This is just great, patting each other on the back. But that is going to do it, unfortunately, for today's show. Thank you to Prize Picks Daily Fantasy Simplified. Use our promo code GRIDIRON to receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. Again, that's promo code GRIDIRON to receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Have a great weekend, everybody. I will talk to you again with Pat Fitzmaurice on Sunday night.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.